It was just another warm Friday evening in downtown Charleston. The air was thick with the scent of roasted coffee beans and the distant sound of live jazz drifting out from a corner bar. Locals bustled in and out of late-night shops and cafes, while the sky burned orange with the setting sun. Among the moving crowd was Marcus Reid, a 38-year-old man with a calm demeanor and quiet strength. Dressed simply in a fitted navy t-shirt, worn jeans, and clean sneakers, he looked like just another guy out for a casual stroll. Slung across his shoulder was a brown leather messenger bag, well-aged but well-kept. To the world, he seemed ordinary. But Marcus wasn't just anyone. He was a decorated Navy SEAL, currently on leave after serving in several high-stakes missions overseas. Years of discipline and experience had shaped his walk, his posture, his quiet alertness. Even on his day off, he noticed things others didn't. The way people moved, the direction of the breeze, the sounds that didn't belong. That evening, Marcus was on his way to a small independent bookstore 3 blocks from his apartment. He'd been meaning to pick up a memoir by a retired general, something to read slowly over the weekend. For the first time in months, his mind felt unclenched. No orders to follow, no alerts to monitor. Just a man reconnecting with the simple joy of walking free in his own country. He paused briefly at an intersection, waiting for the light to change. And that's when he heard it. The sharp, almost theatrical squeal of tires. A black and white police cruiser pulled up to the curb with deliberate speed. The door swung open, and out stepped Officer Callahan, a tall white man with close-cropped blonde hair and a gaze that scanned Marcus like a barcode. The street noise didn't quiet, but something in the air shifted. "Hey, you," Callahan barked, his voice carrying over the hum of the city. "Were you off to in such a hurry?" Marcus turned, surprised but not startled. His eyes met the officer's, not with fear, not with defiance, but with a practiced calmness that only someone who had stared death in the face could carry. "To the bookstore," Marcus replied evenly. But something told him this wouldn't be a quick encounter. Not tonight. Officer Callahan took a slow step forward, boots clicking against the sidewalk. He folded his arms, the fabric of his uniform stretching slightly across his broad chest. "A bookstore, huh?" he repeated, voice thick with suspicion. "What's in the bag?" Marcus Reid shifted his weight ever so slightly, not as a sign of discomfort, but as if grounding himself. He could already sense what this was, not a routine question, not a friendly neighborhood check-in, but something laced with assumption, maybe even hostility. "Books. A laptop," Marcus said calmly, motioning toward his messenger bag. "Nothing dangerous." But Callahan wasn't satisfied. He took another step closer, hands hovering near his utility belt. "You carrying anything I should know about?" the officer pressed. "Any weapons? Substances?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. A few pedestrians slowed their steps, drawn by the unmistakable edge in Callahan's tone. A woman holding a shopping bag paused just long enough to glance over. A young man across the street pulled out his phone, just in case. Marcus didn't flinch. His voice remained even, his body still relaxed. "You want to check?" he asked, not with sarcasm, but with quiet confidence. Callahan blinked, clearly not expecting that response. The man in front of him wasn't fidgeting, wasn't getting defensive. In fact, he looked in control. "I'll ask the questions," the officer snapped, irritation flaring. "Drop the bag." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Am I being detained?" "You fit the description of someone we're looking for." Callahan shot back, avoiding the question. Marcus exhaled softly through his nose. He'd heard that line before, vague, unverifiable, and almost always used when the real reason was something no one wanted to admit. Still, without breaking eye contact, Marcus reached for his bag. His movements were slow, deliberate, professional. He placed the leather strap in both hands and extended it toward Callahan. "Go ahead. You're welcome to look." The crowd around them had grown slightly, people now clearly stopping to observe. Phones glinted in the streetlights, several aimed directly at the scene. The atmosphere crackled with quiet anticipation. Callahan yanked the bag from Marcus's hands, his jaw tight. He crouched slightly, unzipping the bag with an exaggerated motion, as if expecting something to leap out. Inside, a hardcover novel, a stainless steel water bottle, a neatly wrapped charging cable, and a matte black laptop case. "That's it." Callahan rifled through the items anyway, pulling out the laptop and flipping it in his hands. His face hardened further as the lack of anything suspicious became obvious. "You travel light," he muttered. "I'm not traveling," Marcus replied. "I live 3 blocks from here." Callahan seemed increasingly rattled. This wasn't going how he expected. The man hadn't resisted, hadn't panicked, hadn't offered him any reason to escalate. He was just calm, annoyingly calm. Then Marcus reached slowly into his back pocket. "Easy," Callahan barked, immediately straightening up. "I'm just getting my ID," Marcus said coolly, as if he were the one reassuring the officer. He pulled out a thin metal card holder, flipped it open, and offered a sleek identification card with one hand. Callahan took it with hesitation. His eyes scanned the text. United States Navy SEAL. LT Commander Marcus Reid. For a moment, the officer's smirk faltered. "You're military?" he asked, voice a bit lower now. Marcus nodded. "That's correct." The crowd leaned in a little closer. Someone whispered, "Oh, he messed up." But Marcus wasn't done yet. "You still think I fit the description?" he asked, not confrontational, just steady, sharp, and surgical. Callahan didn't answer. Because everyone, including him, knew the answer wasn't about a description. It was about an assumption. The sidewalk now felt like a stage. Phones were raised openly, cameras capturing every movement, every word. Marcus Reid stood tall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Officer Callahan, meanwhile, looked like a man suddenly unsure of his footing. "Let's see what else is in here," Callahan muttered, more to himself than anyone else, as he resumed digging through Marcus's bag, perhaps desperate to find something, anything, to justify the stop. He pulled out a hardcover book, flipping it in his hand like contraband. "Leadership Under Fire, a Navy SEAL's Guide to Mental Strength," he read aloud, confusion lining his brow. "You read this stuff?" Marcus tilted his head ever so slightly, his lips barely curving. "I wrote it." That answer hit like a low ripple of thunder. A soft wave of laughter and murmurs swept through the crowd. Someone let out a whistle. A woman clapped once, sarcastically. The book, meant to intimidate, had just boomeranged back at Callahan like poetic justice. Callahan's face flushed red. He shoved the book back into the bag, his frustration now visible in every movement. "Cut the attitude," he snapped, though his voice had lost the bite it once held. Marcus raised his hands in mock surrender, the gesture subtle but razor-sharp. "You're the one who stopped me, officer. I'm just standing here." With forced focus, Callahan pulled out the next item, a sleek laptop, and gave it a shake, as if it might reveal something hidden. Nothing. Finally, he reached for a small leather journal, flipping through the pages filled with Marcus's precise, military-style handwriting. He paused on one page, reading silently. Something shifted in his face. Leadership isn't about control, it's about service. You don't fight for recognition. You fight because it's the right thing to do. The words hit like a mirror. He shut the journal abruptly and shoved it back into the bag. "You're free to go," he barked, stepping away like someone trying to exit a room filled with smoke. But Marcus didn't move. Instead, he crossed his arms and stared at the officer. "Not so fast," he said, his voice calm, firm. "You stopped me, accused me, emptied my bag in front of these people. I think they, and I, deserve an explanation." The crowd responded instantly. Cheers, nods, voices rising. "What's the reason? Say it out loud. You can't just walk away." Callahan glanced around. The phones, the eyes, the questions, they were all on him now. His badge, his belt, none of it seemed to shield him from the weight of the public gaze. Marcus took a single step forward, not threatening, but assertive. "You're not going to answer?" he asked, eyes locked on the officer. "What description do I supposedly fit?" Callahan's lips parted. No words came out. Marcus let the silence speak. Then he continued, voice sharp but measured. "Let me guess. Black man. Walking. Breathing. Not looking scared enough." Gasps echoed through the street. The crowd shifted like a wave, rippling with disbelief and tension. A woman up front whispered, "He said it." A man behind her murmured, "He's right." Callahan's jaw clenched. But Marcus wasn't finished. "You thought you could intimidate me," he said. "Maybe escalate this. But what you didn't expect was that I'd stay calm. That I'd know how to handle you. That I'd record everything." He pulled out his phone and held it up. The screen was active. Recording. The officer paled. "You owe these people an answer," Marcus said. "Not to me. To all of them. For why you thought you could abuse your badge just because I happened to fit your definition of suspicious. The crowd fell into hushed silence, all attention focused on Callahan. The man who had strutted into the moment with power now stood shrunken beneath the pressure of truth and justice. I was just doing my job, Callahan muttered, his voice thin. Marcus raised an eyebrow. If that's your idea of just doing your job, maybe you shouldn't have it. A roar of applause and shouting erupted behind him. Someone yelled, "File a complaint." Another, "Call internal affairs." But Marcus didn't smile. His face remained steady, solemn. This wasn't a victory parade. It was a moment of reckoning. He leaned in slightly and added, "You didn't expect pushback today, did you? But here we are." Callahan, red-faced and visibly shaken, looked around for an exit that didn't exist. He had entered this scene believing he had control, but he had forgotten one thing. Real strength doesn't scream. It stands still and makes the world listen. For a long moment, no one moved. The air in downtown Charleston had changed. No longer buzzing with casual chatter or the rhythm of a Friday night crowd, it now pulsed with something heavier, truth. A truth that couldn't be ignored, excused, or edited out. Officer Brent Callahan stood at the center of it, not in control, but cornered by his own actions. Across from him, Marcus Reid didn't gloat. He didn't need to. His stillness, his unshaken presence, said everything. The fact that he had stood through it all without raising his voice, without reaching for anger, made his words more powerful than anything else that had been said. Someone from the crowd stepped forward. A middle-aged black woman, wearing a church dress and holding a to-go cup, spoke gently. "Thank you," she said, her voice low but full of meaning. "For staying calm. For standing up." Marcus nodded once, humbly. "I didn't do it just for me." Behind her, others chimed in. "Speak the truth, brother. We see you." He thought he could silence you, but you taught him something. The officer shifted again, hands now useless at his sides. The badge on his chest gleamed under the streetlights, but it no longer commanded respect. Not here. Not now. Marcus finally took a step back, not in retreat, but in release. He slung his bag back over his shoulder, zipped it shut, and took a long, quiet look at the officer who had tried to humiliate him. "You could have just said good evening," Marcus said softly. "Could have asked if I needed directions. Could have walked away when there was clearly no threat." Callahan opened his mouth, but again, nothing came out. The crowd didn't need an apology anymore. They had seen the truth unfold. They had filmed it. They would share it. This moment would not disappear into silence. Marcus turned to the crowd, his tone thoughtful but steady. "This isn't new, and it won't be the last time. But every time someone records it, every time someone stands still and speaks up, we make it harder to ignore." Applause broke out, not the wild, cheering kind, but something deeper, respectful, grounded, real. A few people clapped slowly, solemnly. Others just nodded. Some, like the young man still filming from across the street, had tears in their eyes. Marcus nodded once more, then began to walk. Calmly. No rush. No fear. Callahan didn't stop him. He couldn't. Behind Marcus, conversations rippled through the crowd. "Did you see how he handled that? That was strength. Real strength. No yelling. Just truth." And as Marcus rounded the corner toward his original destination, the bookstore still waiting just 3 blocks away, he felt the weight in his chest ease. Just a little. He hadn't come out tonight looking for a confrontation. He'd only wanted a book. But maybe this was the real story he was meant to carry. Not the one written in pages, but the one that had just been lived on the street. The night air felt lighter as Marcus Reid finally stepped through the doors of the small independent bookstore. The bell above the frame gave a soft chime. The scent of aged paper and polished would replace the tension of the street behind him. He didn't say much to the clerk, just a quiet nod and a glance toward the shelf where he knew the memoir waited. As his fingers ran along the spines of the books, Marcus wasn't thinking about what had just happened to him. Not exactly. He was thinking about all the people who didn't get the chance to respond the way he did. The ones who didn't have cameras watching, who didn't wear a uniform that demanded some level of respect, at least once it was revealed. What happened to him that night wasn't extraordinary. It was common. Too common. And that was the problem. He thought about his trainees back on base. About the young men and women, black, white, brown, learning discipline, honor, composure. He thought about what he would tell them when they asked why things like this still happened. Maybe he'd say this. Courage isn't just found on the battlefield. Sometimes it's standing still on a sidewalk, refusing to shrink under someone else's fear. Out on the street, the crowd had started to disperse, but the impact would linger. Someone would post the video. It would be seen. It might spark outrage, or conversation, or silence. But tonight, one man had stood his ground, with grace, with truth, and with every reason to lose control, but didn't. And in that quiet act, something shifted.